Good morning. Actually, it's morning when I'm doing this, but it's probably whatever time when you're doing it, whenever you have time, right? So I wanted to do some chapter 7 challenge problems here. And so let me go ahead and make that happen. So here we have a challenge problem. It says refer to figure 7.5. So this is figure 7.5. If the supply curve is S, okay, right here, and the demand curve shifts from D to D prime, D to D prime, what is the change in producer surplus? So again, reading those questions very, very carefully. So our original point of intersection or equilibrium is going to be here. And I made that bigger so that we can see exactly where we're looking at. That would make our price, I'll just call it P1, our Q1 at 50. The maximum price on the D demand curve is going to be 200. Our minimum will be right here at 0 because we're using supply, not supply prime. So that's the first thing you want to think about. So I'm just going to X that out. Okay, in looking at this, because it's asking for producer surplus, and we know, just a minute, Control I. Okay, that's not where, okay, yes, it is. So we know, again, that our supply is going from D to D1, and what we want to do is, Control L, okay, is we want to look at, because it is producer surplus, we're going to look at the area that is underneath the price, but above the supply curve. So this area that we have right here. So that's why I wanted to take and look at where exactly that minimum is at, which is going to be 0. So that's price min. Okay, so over here, what we're going to do is first calculate our supply and demand for producer surplus. And again, notice I'm using the S and the D, not the primes, because that's what I'm concentrated on first. So I'm going to go ahead and say that my P1 is going to equal 100. My P min is going to equal 0. And my quantity that I'm interested in, I'll just call it quantity 1, is going to be 50. So if I take, again, remembering that how to calculate producer surplus is 1/2 the base times the height. So if I look at this, I go, okay, I have P1, which equals 100, minus P0, or P min in this case, which equals 0. So that gives me 100. And that is one of the areas of one of the bases of our triangle. And then I'm going to say, well, our quantity, which gives us the height of our triangle, is going to equal 50. So if I do 1/2 times 100, which is going to equal 50, and I multiply that by 50, I end up with 2,500. So that's my original producer surplus at supply and demand. To get the second one, I'm going to, again, look at my problem, and I'm going to say, okay, now I want D prime and supply, and that's going to be this right here. Now you can calculate, you can do this a couple different ways. You could calculate the increase here and the increase here. I don't do it that way. I just say, okay, what's the producer surplus at supply and demand prime? What's the producer surplus there? So our new price changes. Our P1 changes to 150. Our P min is still 0. And our quantity does change to 75. I'll call it Q2. Okay, so again, 150 minus the 0 is 150. If I take half of that, I got 75. Multiply the 75 by the 75 to get the area of the new producer's triangle, and that's going to be 5625. Notice that it increased. We went from 2500 to 5625, so I'm going to just note that was an increase. And an increase of how much? If I take 5625 and subtract 2500, I end up with 3125. So I know I have an increase of 3125. I look at my answers, and producer surplus increases by 3125, and that would be answer A in this particular problem. Okay, let's move on to our next problem. A drought in Spain destroys many red grape crops, causing the prices of both red grapes and red wine to rise. As a result, the consumer surplus, so we're looking at consumer surplus now, in the market for red grapes does what? Okay, so we know as we look at this, Spain destroys red grapes, so that is a supply decreasing. So the supply curve in the graph is shifting inward and to the left, which causes the price to increase. We also know as price increases, consumer surplus decreases, all else held constant or ceteris paribus. So it tells us right here that the prices of red grapes and red wine both rise. So because the prices of each increased, that means the consumer surplus in both markets would decrease, all else held constant. So I'm going to look for an answer that has decrease and decrease. And so the right answer here would be D. So no calculations on that one. Okay, here's our next problem. You could do this in Excel to make a graph if you desire. I do it the old way, so to speak. So here we have both the supply and demand diagrams are straight lines. And at equilibrium consumer surplus, so that area above the price, right, but below demand. So if this is our demand curve, we want to calculate this triangle as consumer surplus. So the first thing when you look at these, I think is the easiest thing, is to look at what is price equilibrium and what is quantity equilibrium, because that's going to give us the lower base of this triangle, or one of the sides of this triangle. So I know that price equilibrium is going to equal $4. I know that quantity equilibrium is going to equal 12. Okay. So what is the maximum price? Because to get the consumer surplus, if this is on a graph like this, I want to figure out what's the maximum amount, what's the maximum price that people would charge. So the maximum price that we have here, notice that the highest price over here in the price column is $12. So that's going to be my price maximum. Okay. So now that I know my my price maximum is 12, I know price equilibrium is 4, and I know my quantity equilibrium over here is 12, then I can easily calculate the area of this triangle by using 1/2 base times height. So 12, I'm going to start with my price max. I'm going to subtract that from my price minimum. And that's going to be $12 minus $4, which gives me $8. So the area here, the line segment here is going to be worth $8. Because I'm calculating the area of a triangle, I'm going to do 1/2 8 times whatever my quantity equilibrium is. And here it's 12. So 1/2 of 8 is 4 times 12. That's going to equal 48. Okay, so D would be the right answer in this particular problem. Cool. In our next problem, I cut off, I'm sorry. Okay, so if there's one unit, so we have one unit, and the buyers bid against each other for the right to purchase it, then the good will sell for how much? So imagine there's just one good here. And think about it this way, there's one good, people are standing in line according to their willingness to pay. David's only willing to pay 15, so when the bid price comes to 15 and starts to go slightly above that, David's going to fall out of the market. As the bid rises to 1801, Alexa's going to fall out of the market. When the bid price rises to 2101, Erica will fall out of the market. And the last person that will be left is BU, and he doesn't have to pay his willingness to pay of 27. He just has to wait for Erica to fall out of the market. So I would say in this particular example, once the price gets to 2101, okay, slightly higher than that, then Binyu is going to come in and grab that one product that is available at auction. So basically, again, standing in line according to the willingness to pay. As the willingness to pay starts to rise, people drop out of the market. Look at how many goods that you're looking at here, and we're going to say it's going to sell for 21 or slightly more. Okay, in our last example, they give us something just a twitch bit different, and they're going to tell us what producer surplus is here. We have Mike and Laura sell lemonade on the corner for $3.20 per cup. Cost them 20 cents to make each cup. So our price is going to be $3.20. The cost of that, or where their supply curve comes in, is, and I'll just write cost, knowing that's the supply curve, is 20 cents. So their profitability per cup is $3. To kind of match that up and look at where we're seeing that in demand and supply. So here's our supply curve. Here's our demand curve. And demand and supply are going to be at equilibrium right here at $3.20. This is going to be at 20 cents. So remember that producer surplus is the area that is below the price, above the supply curve, and we're going to follow it over here to the quantity that is sold. In this particular problem, they're telling you that the area here is $60. So that's how much their profitability is. So we know that price equilibrium, let me erase that. Okay, I'm just going to do this. We know that producer surplus is equal to the price minus the cost, okay, times the quantity that we have. So here we have producer surplus is $60, which is equal to the price minus the cost, or the profitability, which is going to be $3 times the quantity. So we're going to go ahead and divide each side by 3, and we'll get the quantity that is sold equals 20. So here the right answer is 20. Now you might have asked yourself, how come you didn't do 1/2 base times height here? I didn't do that because the $3 is already telling me that is the $60 is already telling me it was derived by 1/2 base times height, because it is the area of the triangle for producer surplus. So that's why I didn't do the dividing it by 1/2. Okay, hopefully that gives you some perspective on some of the challenge problems for Chapter 7, and I'll see you back in Chapter 8.